I've been chasing Mason for a long time. Mason found it annoying and lied, saying he was at a ski resort 2,000 kilometers away. I went there and got caught in an avalanche. While trapped in the snow, Mason called. You actually went? Didn't you realize I was messing with you? It turns out you're not here, I said with difficulty, my breath freezing in the air. Good thing. Good thing you're safe. Good thing we're not together yet. If I died, you wouldn't be sad, right? When I woke up, it was still dark in front of me. Everything was silent. I was stuck between a car and a pile of snow, unable to move. I blinked, feeling warm liquid running down the corner of my eye. It was blood. I remembered, just now. A huge wave of snow slammed me against the car door, and I hit my head. There had just been an avalanche here. Why was I here? Oh, I was looking for Mason. I'd been chasing him, literally. In the physical sense. Wherever he was, I'd find a way to get to him. After being avoided many times, I finally got through to his phone. Hello. Is this Mason? On the other end, hysterical rock music played, but Mason's irritated voice cut through. Henry, what the hell do you want? I gripped the phone tightly with my right hand. I said seriously, I want to date you. He snorted coldly. Are you crazy? I shook my head, then suddenly remembered he couldn't see me. So I said slowly, no, I'm not. Where are you? I'll come find you. There was silence for a few seconds on the other end, as if he'd had enough. I'm at the ski resort in Jiang City. If you dare, call me. Okay, I said, but the line went dead halfway through. As I recalled this, I suddenly thought of something important. Mason, had he also been caught in the avalanche? Was he, like me, buried alive in the snow at minus 30 degrees Celsius? My whole body was frozen stiff. I was stuck in the tight space between the car and the snow. Struggling, I pulled out my phone. The battery was almost dead, showing only a thin red line. Suddenly Mason's call came through. You really went? Didn't you realize I was messing with you? I couldn't speak, my breath shaky and rapid against the phone. He paused, then said softly, Henry, you're really dumb. I realized what was going on, suppressing the stabbing pain in my chest. I said with effort, so, you're not here. My breath turned to ice as I forced a smile. Good thing. Good thing you're safe. Good thing you haven't agreed to be with me yet. What? My muscles trembled, every word I said shaking. Mason couldn't hear me clearly. Blood loss and the cold made me dizzy. My lashes stuck with ice crystals fluttered. Then my eyes closed. So cold. I whispered. Mason was silent for a moment, then said coldly, Henry, stop pretending to be pitiful. You deserve this. A sharp pain struck the back of my head. Fragments of memory suddenly flashed through my mind. In the endless snow, Mason wrote my name on the ground. He wrapped the other end of his scarf around me, holding me close. In a gentle voice unlike now, he said, Henry, never leave me. I blinked slowly and said into the phone, Mason, we've been together, right? There was no answer. I turned stiffly and saw the phone screen had gone black. I didn't know if Mason had heard my last words. We've been together, I thought. Otherwise, why would my heart hurt so much when he said those lies? I wish I could ask him in person. If only I could survive. 2. Faintly, I started to feel less cold. I even felt warm. Could I be rescued so soon? With my eyes closed, I thought, once I'm saved, I'll go straight back to Mason. I want to confirm with him if we really were ever in love, and why we separated. I thought about this for a long time. Suddenly my body felt very light. When I opened my eyes again, I found myself standing right in front of Mason. The view was familiar. So was the person in it. He was looking down at his phone, his well-shaped brows furrowed. Mason, I called softly. He locked his screen and looked up. Mason is half foreign, his hair is very short, and his eyes a unique deep gray. But now, those gray eyes held no trace of me. He couldn't hear me or see me. I reached out to touch him, and my fingers passed right through his fitted black leather jacket and chest. Was this a dream? Or had I already died? Then I thought, it didn't really matter either way. I stared at Mason's handsome face for a while and asked, "Why did we break up?" Mason didn't answer. He lowered his eyes and blocked my number. "Henry, don't show up again. Seriously annoying." I lowered my gaze, quietly thinking, I guess I won't see him anymore. It seems I'm already dead. Would Mason be happy if he knew? I thought maybe I did something so terrible that he hated me this much. What exactly did I do? My memories blurred like distorted images. I couldn't find the answer. Suddenly, the door was knocked. Mason's assistant, Daniel, pushed it open. "Bro, change your clothes. The car's ready." Mason nodded and headed to the closet. He pulled off his black hoodie with one hand at his waist. The matching tank top lifted slightly, revealing firm but not overly defined abs. He looked back, cold eyes sharp. "Wait outside." Daniel's ears flushed red, and he forced a smile. "Bro, I heard you're still wearing the safety amulet your ex gave you. Is it this one?" Given Mason's cold personality and bad temper, as always criticized by the media, I thought Mason would snap at him harshly. Something like, "None of your business," or "Get out." But he didn't. He just looked down where Daniel was pointing, grabbed the amulet, and yanked it off. His eyes were indifferent. "You want it? It's yours now." The milky white jade, strung with a red cord, swayed gently in Mason's hand. I watched, and a fuzzy memory started to clear. This amulet, I gave it to Mason. Before a championship, I tied the red string around his neck. "This is a safety amulet. It'll keep you safe." Mason glanced down and said, "Superstition." But he didn't take it off. Instead, he held me tightly right after. The jade was cool, pressed between two warm chests, slowly warming up. I told Mason then that I had braided the red string myself. But I didn't say the jade was the only thing left from my parents, abandoned with me at the welfare home's doorstep. "Can you not give it to anyone else?" My heart felt like it was hanging in Mason's hand, ready to shatter any second. I stood in front of him and pleaded, "If you don't like it, you can give it back to me." Daniel stepped closer. "Really? Bro, I heard you two used to be very close." "Not love, just kids clinging to each other," Mason said. His lips moved softly but seemed to chew through me. Daniel laughed loudly. "Thanks, bro." Mason let go. The amulet slipped through my open palm into Daniel's hand. Without looking back, Mason left. I stood frozen, watching Daniel toss the amulet through the window into the pool. "No." I rushed out and jumped into the water, but I couldn't even make a ripple. The icy water pierced through me, forever separating me from the amulet sinking to the bottom. An illusion. At this moment, I was the truly intangible one. Now, I had nothing. My whole body felt like it was being pierced by thousands of needles. Turns out the soul can feel cold and pain too. "Mason, I regret giving you that amulet." 3. Mason walked out of the changing room in a sharp, fitted racing suit. He carried his helmet under one arm, his fierce, sharp features fully visible. The TV in the living room was on. A breaking news bulletin interrupted the racing forecast. An earthquake struck Jiang City an hour ago, near a famous local ski resort, triggering an avalanche. Mason's steps suddenly stopped. He turned to look at the screen. "The rescue team has entered the disaster zone, casualties." With a click, Daniel turned off the TV. He smiled apologetically. "Bro, if we don't leave now, it'll be too late." Mason glanced down at his phone, then strode out of the room. I wondered if his buried body had been found. I wanted to go back, but something kept me bound to Mason's side. I watched him put on his helmet amidst the cheers and screams from the crowd and get into the race car. The engines roared, and the cars, like furious beasts, charged onto the track. Mason wasn't leading as usual. I stood on the stands. Someone nearby said, "Mason doesn't seem himself today." No sooner had they spoken, Mason's car clipped the fence, lost control, and spun off the track. After flipping twice, it landed on the grass in the center of the track, smoking embarrassingly. Amidst the shocked crowd, Mason kicked open the door and climbed out of the car. He lost the race, finishing at an unprecedented last place. Mason's odd behavior wasn't because of his performance during the race. It was because he wasn't angry about losing. Back in the room, the team doctor wrapped the wound on his arm. Mason held his phone in his left hand and awkwardly tapped the screen. Suddenly, he smashed the phone against the opposite wall. I floated over and saw the cracked screen was displaying today's news search page. Several trending topics showed news of his crash today. He did care after all. After all, racing was the thing he cared most about, his one true passion. In blurred memories, Mason had been furious before too. But back then, I seemed to be right beside him. Not like those who whispered and avoided him. I looked brave and open, like a white cloud embracing a fiery volcano, trying to calm the impending eruption. When we were kids in the welfare home, I sat beside him and said, "I believe in you." "I'm okay," I said. Later, as adults, the scene changed. I buried my head in his neck, saying, "Don't worry. I'll help you. We'll be together forever." Now, he could hear none of it. No one dared approach when he was angry. Idiot. I looked at the lonely Mason and for the first time scolded him. "It's your fault for losing the amulet." No one came to comfort him. Mason silently breathed heavily. Daniel took a call and whispered, "Mason, someone outside wants to see you. They said, tell them to get lost." Mason's voice was loud but his frown softened. "They came back fast." "Who came back?" Daniel didn't understand and explained. "He said he's a doctor from the city hospital and wants to talk to you about Henry." 4. I searched my memory for anything about the doctor. I got some blurry images. A male doctor looked at my brain CT scan and asked, "Can you remember anything now?" I shook my head. His tone was gentle. "Don't worry too much. Keep taking your medication, and there's hope for recovery." I felt frustrated, but I keep forgetting whether I took my medicine. The doctor said, "That's okay. I can send you daily reminders." I was already drifting toward the door, thinking that maybe if I saw the doctor's face, I might finally remember what illness I had. But Mason didn't move for a long time, then snorted coldly. "So, you ended up with a doctor." I froze in place, as if someone had shot me in the chest from behind. When the pain exploded, I looked at Mason in disbelief. "So that's how little I mean to you. Those memories I thought were precious. To him, they must be stains. Tell him to get lost." Mason clenched his fist, blood seeping through the bandage. Each word squeezed out through gritted teeth. I have nothing to say to him. When Mason went out, he was swarmed by reporters. Before getting in the car, a man rushed up and pressed against the door. "Mason, I have something important to tell you." Mason, wearing sunglasses, tightened his jaw. "Who are you?" "I'm a doctor from the city hospital and a friend of Henry's." "Get lost." Mason snapped. "I don't want to hear his name again." "Then tell me where he is." Mason paused mid-door close. Expressionless. "I don't know." I don't understand why Mason lied. He stopped the only person who was looking for me. Joseph was anxious. He needs care. He can't be alone for long. Mason sounded like he'd heard a joke. Mocking. "Call him whatever you want, a slow kid or an old man. Just don't get in my way." Joseph didn't get angry, just frowned deeply. He was such a good guy. How could he fall for someone like you? "Yeah. Before. I wanted to know why Mason and I broke up. Now, I wonder why I fell for him." Mason's breathing grew heavy. He jumped and slammed Joseph against the car, grinding out, "I'm a jerk. But I never wronged Henry." "Right." Daniel stood in front of Mason, loudly backing him up. "Henry was the one who clung on. Broke up then kept coming back acting innocent. Mason's the real victim." Voices and camera flashes flooded my ears like waves. Mason did admit to having a same-sex partner he grew up with. "Yeah, but they haven't been seen together since last year's championship ended. I heard that partner married rich and thought racing was dangerous, feared Mason would die on the track." Championship breakup. Those two words stabbed my brain like needles, churning out strings of memories. I was in agony. I knelt, holding my head, pleading uselessly. "No, I didn't. I wasn't playing innocent or betraying Mason. It's because of a car accident." Joseph's roar cut me off. He stared fiercely at Mason, saying each word slowly. A year ago, he had an accident on the way to the track to see you. The chaos in my head calmed down. The world was so quiet I could hear Mason's deep, rapid breathing. The background blurred. The only thing clear was his face, suddenly drained of color. Tears overflowed. I smiled silently. Mason, I remember everything now. 5. When the taxi flipped, I was in the back seat holding the ring box, rehearsing putting the ring on Mason's finger over and over. A loud crash, and the ring and box flew out, never to be found again. After waking up, my memories were fragmented and confused for a long time. Joseph was my attending doctor. He told me there was a blood clot in my brain pressing on critical memory centers, highly fatal. Conservative treatment was safer, but could cause Alzheimer's-like brain degeneration. Piecing together my memories, I concluded I really loved Mason. Then I broke up with him. I once promised never to lie to him. That day, I told so many lies. I said I didn't want to grow old with him. Said I didn't love him. Mason was silent on the other end of the phone. Then, in a hoarse voice, asked, "What did you say?" Just like now. He seemed dazed and confirmed with Joseph. "Henry had an accident on your championship day. He has severe aftereffects and broke up with you because he didn't want to hold you back." Joseph looked at Mason, voice soft. "Mason, you don't know the whole truth." Mason frowned, his pale lips moving before he said, "Impossible." He didn't look sick at all. "Don't make up those cheap excuses. I don't believe it." Joseph shook off his hand. "Mason, I hope you won't regret this later." I watched Joseph leave, quietly thinking, Mason won't regret it. He's too proud. So proud he immediately thought of a comeback as soon as I said break up. My heart suddenly raced, regretting those words. But he quickly said, "Good thing you broke up first." Same here. My heartbeat slowed and sank with the busy tone on the line. Mason liked to win, and always did. Back then, and even now. But Mason's face was cold and gray now. Without his usual pride, the driver pulled up to Mason's house. Daniel opened the door for him. "Bro, we're here." He handed Mason a new phone, the SIM cards already in. Mason pulled the hood of his black sweatshirt over his head, leaned back in the rear seat, motionless. "Bro." Mason snapped out of it and took the phone. "Thanks." Inside the house, Mason put the new phone on the table. I stood across from him, hearing him say my name, Henry. My heart jolted. I stared wide-eyed, hoping he could see me. But he just looked down at the phone and continued, "If you call now, I'll give you one more chance to explain." Mason didn't completely disbelieve Joseph's words. That was just how he was, cold and hard. A shell that seemed impenetrable. If I hadn't known that from childhood, I probably wouldn't have fallen for him. I leaned closer, tilted my head to look at his face, and asked, "Are you waiting for my call?" He had a new phone now, so the number he'd blocked before was unblocked. But I probably wouldn't call again. Unless, suddenly, the phone on the table rang. We both jumped in surprise. It was my body. Had it been found? 6. The phone number was familiar, but it wasn't mine. Mason saw it, and slowly answered the call. On the other end came the voice of the old orphanage director. "Mason, are you with Henry?" "No," Mason said. "Director, what's the matter?" "Oh, he came 2 days ago, asked me to find some old things for him, and said he was going to a very cold place. Henry's always been afraid of the cold since he was a kid. He gets sick as soon as the temperature drops. I don't know why he would go somewhere so cold." Mason listened quietly and patiently. As the sky darkened, his face grew pale and gray. "Henry asked me to find all these things, but we can't get through to him on the phone. Could you come pick them up for him?" Finally, Mason spoke, his voice low and hoarse. "Okay, I'll go now." A few minutes later, the matte black Porsche 911 sped onto the main road. In my memories, I'd sat in Mason's passenger seat countless times. He was good at accelerating, but when he drove me around, he always drove slowly and steadily. I would grab his right hand at red lights, smiling shyly and saying, "Mason, you're cool no matter what you do, whether tearing across the track or driving calmly and steady. He'd turn his head to look out the window, pretending not to be moved. The red light was counting down. At the last second, Mason tightly squeezed my hand back. My heart suddenly raced. I don't know if my face flushed. I only remember the warm glow of the sunset that evening, casting a rosy light through the window onto our faces. Like a rare, limited edition skin in a game. Precious. One of a kind. Back then, I thought, how wonderful it would be to always sit in Mason's passenger seat. That same evening. But today there was no beautiful sunset. The sky was heavy with dark clouds, as if it was going to snow the same storm 2,000 kilometers away. Today, Mason drove fast. After arriving at the orphanage, the director led him into the office. Henry asked me to find all the photos where you two appeared together. On the desk was a small box. The director walked over and pulled out a yellowed photo. Look, in this big group photo, you and Henry are standing right next to each other. 12-year-old Mason looked striking, cold-faced, standing in the back row. The boy beside him had curved eyes and a small dimple on one side of his lip. That was me. Mason held the photo, looking at it. The director said, "During those years you were here, you and Henry got along well. If your parents hadn't taken you away later." Suddenly remembering something, the director took a black cloth pouch from the box. "Remember this? Henry slipped it into your car before you left the orphanage, but your mother threw it out the window later. I was afraid Henry would be upset, so I kept it myself without telling him." Mason took it and slowly opened it. Inside was a palm-sized notebook. Flipping through, Mason saw the writing inside. "Because I'm too skinny. Those guys bullied me. But today a new big brother helped me teach them a lesson. He's so cool. The big brother's name is Mason. Everyone says Mason's a monster with a bad temper. But I don't think so. He's the most handsome and best person. They always make fun of me and Mason. Mason told me not to follow him all the time, but I said no." The diary was fragmented and scattered, spanning the entire 2 years Mason spent at the orphanage. On the last page, I wrote, "It's great to have found my parents, but I wish Mason hadn't left. I probably won't see him again, right? If we meet again when we grow up, I will definitely." The sentence abruptly ended at the edge of the page, unfinished. Mason's fingers trembled as he flipped the page, noticing the next one was torn out. "Henry." Mason softly called my name, his voice full of confusion and regret. He took out his phone and dialed halfway. Then the ringtone suddenly sounded. He pressed to answer. "Henry." "You." A strange voice interrupted. "Sorry, sir. Are you a friend of Henry's?" Mason asked. "What happened to him?" "He died in the avalanche." 7. I have no family. The last call on my phone was to Mason, so he was the first to be notified. The rescuers expressed their condolences on the phone, then asked if Mason could arrive in the city within 3 days to identify the body. Mason seemed frozen instantly, then abruptly hung up the call. The old director saw Mason's terrible expression and hurriedly asked, "Mason, what happened?" "It's not true," Mason said. The phone rang again. Mason quickly hung up and rushed out. He went to the airport first, only to be told a blizzard had hit the city, and all flights were delayed. His phone kept ringing, so he just turned it off. He drove straight onto the highway, exiting the ramps. He set the GPS destination to the city, over 2,000 kilometers away, driving there himself. I thought Mason wasn't quite right, but actually, Mason has always been impulsive. He ran away from home as a teenager and found the orphanage on his own. Later, he single-handedly fought over a dozen guys much bigger than him. He saved me, the small and skinny one. Mason fights like his life depends on it, a desperate, do-or-die fury. Those guys feared him but didn't accept it, secretly calling Mason a monster, saying his gray eyes proved it. Slowly, everyone at the orphanage avoided him, except me. I didn't think Mason was a monster. I thought he was a divine warrior sent from heaven. I clung to him every day, secretly slipping the chocolates I didn't want to eat into his pocket. In the dog days of summer, Mason quickly noticed something was off, reached into his pocket, and opened his palm covered in some unknown sticky stuff in front of everyone. Everyone burst out laughing. My face flushed bright red. Sweating profusely, I shouted, "It's chocolate. I didn't know it would melt." Mason glared at them, curled his finger, and scraped my nose. Idiot. I squatted by the pool washing Mason's pants. A crowd gathered, jeering. Henry's the monster's little wife. Washing his clothes every day. Henry's the little wife. Mason rushed over, splashed the water on them. The ringleader shouted, "The monster's angry. You two are always together, definitely dating." Someone else joined in. Two guys dating. Two guys dating. Afraid Mason would start a fight again, I pulled him away. In a remote corner of the orphanage, Mason was furious. "Henry, don't hang out with me anymore." "I won't." "Didn't you hear what they said? They're making fun of you." I looked up at his flushed face and reddened ears. Suddenly, my mood lifted strangely. Carefree. I smiled up at him. "Let them laugh. So what if we're dating? Not now, but when I grow up and really date you. Let's see if they still laugh." Mason was choked up, his face even redder. The car stopped at a rest area. Breaking my memories, Mason got out to refuel. When he returned, his face was wet, probably splashed cold water on it. His eyes red and irritated. He started the car and kept driving, tirelessly. I wanted to tell him it wasn't so urgent. After all, the city was freezing. Even if the body stayed a few days longer, it wouldn't be unrecognizable. Then I saw the diary on the dashboard. I thought, maybe he just wants to know what was written on that last torn page. 8. Under good road conditions. A 2,000-kilometer drive usually takes about 26 hours. But Mason managed it in just 20 hours and entered the city limits. The heavy snow had stopped, and the sky was a clear, washed-out blue. The rescue team had cleared the road to the ski resort. In the distance, the cable cars hung high above. Mason stopped far from the entrance, got out of the car. There was a strong smell of smoke on him. His face was an exhausted, pale gray. Leaning on the car, Mason murmured, "It's really cold." He took out his phone and redialed my number. No one answered, but he seemed to sigh in relief. "Henry, this has to be one of your pranks again." The phone line was busy. Mason spoke softly to himself. "You want me to remember things from childhood, then agree to get back together, right? Fine. You win. When I see you, we'll get back together." He hung up the phone and drove into the ski resort. The scene was bleak and white. Staff asked why he came and told him. The person injured in the avalanche was already sent to the hospital. But a young man sadly passed away. His head was badly injured. A lot of blood lost. He was found frozen stiff, clutching his phone like he was waiting for someone's call. "It's such a pity. We heard he came looking for someone. So he didn't even wear proper ski gear for the cold." Mason's body shook. It seemed he was underdressed. He began to tremble violently. Before he could get back to the car, he suddenly collapsed on the ground. The staff rushed him to the hospital, guessing he was a relative of the deceased. Fainted from grief. I watched Mason in the ambulance, thinking, no, it's probably guilt, not grief. When Mason woke up, a nurse called in a young female volunteer. She gently said, "We're sorry, but we checked your phone when you fainted. You're here to identify Henry's body, right?" Mason's hoarse voice answered, "Yes." Then, ignoring objections, he pulled out his 4-needle. He asked the volunteer to take him to identify the body. They brought him into a cold room. In the center was a narrow bed, covered with white sheets hanging down the sides. The shape inside was faintly visible. Mason's fingertips trembled, but he still pulled back the sheet. My pale face slowly appeared, but my expression wasn't grim. My eyelashes rested calmly. The corners of my lips curled into a slight smile. A faint dimple showed. Mason curled his finger and lightly scratched my nose. "Idiot. You acted so badly that you couldn't even stop smiling." The volunteer, pitying him, explained gently. That smile was probably a hallucination caused by extreme cold affecting the brain. Before he died, maybe he was thinking of something happy. "Really? Henry?" Mason lowered his gaze to my face and asked. There was no answer. So Mason said, "He must have been remembering old times. Otherwise, if he remembered what I said on the phone, how could he still be smiling? 9. What did he say then? That I was playing tricks on him, and that I was stupid. Because of the brain hemorrhage caused by the head injury, I slowly recalled some old memories. I remembered reuniting with Mason, just like I had hoped in the diary. I really did meet him again when I grew up. Mason had grown taller and colder, walking down from the interview stage in his racing suit, like a pop idol. I stood there stunned, realizing that even the first time seeing him again, I would still fall for him. That feeling was confirmed every time after. I was still an intern reporter then, chasing after him and calling his name. He impatiently turned around and saw my smiling face. 10 years had passed. I thought it was normal that Mason forgot me, but he really didn't remember much. Still, I couldn't help feeling a bit sad. Later, excitedly, I told him about the orphanage and used work as an excuse to invite him out many more times. I pursued him passionately, clingy like when we were kids. When we confirmed our relationship, I gave him a safety jade pendant, and he gave me his championship trophy, engraving both our names on it. That day I was happy. I pulled out a piece of rough-edged paper from my bag, mysteriously saying, "Guess what this is?" Mason looked at me, his gray eyes reflecting my sparkling ones. "This is mine." I couldn't finish my sentence, because Mason suddenly kissed me. We were both awkward beginners, but my heart still raced wildly. Thinking of that, my lips curved slightly again. A sudden chill spread across my face. I looked over and saw Mason had wet my face. He kept looking at my closed eyes. Tears streamed down without blinking. The volunteer got anxious, comforting him softly, while fumbling in their pocket. They didn't find tissues, but pulled out a small sealed bag. I almost forgot. "These are Henry's phone keys and personal belongings. Please keep them safe." Mason slowly took it, and saw a very crumpled piece of paper inside. He unfolded it. The ink was blurred from moisture and drying, but still barely legible on the yellowed old paper. To fall in love with Mason. That last page of the diary, torn off before we parted, was my secret written during my youth. If we meet again when I grow up, I will definitely fall in love with Mason. Being with you is my wish. And now it's come true. The day I was with Mason, and every day after. I want to say this to him. 10. Mason stood in the cold room for a long time, then carefully packed my things. Without expression, he arranged for the return trip, and thanked the staff. Several young people recognized him, whispering that Mason was nothing like the arrogant, rude person the media portrayed. I followed the hearse silently, watching Mason. He hadn't been like this yesterday. All the changes seemed to happen in an instant. Mason's sharp edge was gone. He looked dull and lifeless. The hearse was freezing cold. The driver urged Mason to sit in the passenger seat, but he refused. The car started moving. Mason said softly, "You must have been colder than this day back then. Henry, colder for so long." His voice was flat, his face expressionless. "Henry, are you an idiot?" Tears wet Mason's face again, sliding past his cracked lips. "This wish you finally made come true. Why break up? If you got sick, I could take you to get treatment. Even if you really became an idiot, I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't stop wanting you. Henry." He rose slightly with the car's gentle bumps, then knelt beside my narrow coffin. He seemed to want to hold me, but couldn't. He must be sick, his voice hoarse. "But you weren't wrong. I was. You broke up with me, pretended not to know me, then kept trying to get back together. Was that because you regretted it? I shouldn't have been so angry. I should have known you were sick sooner and begged you to stay. Should have always agreed to get back together. I shouldn't have been impatient with you. Shouldn't have lied to get you here. It's all my fault. All my fault. All my fault." This was something Mason never said before. He was always proud, blessed with everything. He never cared about the right or wrong people said about him. He wasn't afraid of losing anything. As a boy, he abandoned the family I envied and longed for, because his mother interfered with his passions. As an adult, he risked his life to win racing championships. So I couldn't believe Mason would admit he was wrong. He was tall, curled up on the ground like a black shadow. But now I had no words of comfort. No way to hold him like before. No way to gently stroke his back. Never again. Never ever again. 11. Just as the car approached the city entrance, a black van blocked the way. Daniel got out, accompanied by Mason's mother, and had the driver open the rear compartment. Mason was lying on the coffin, his body almost completely lifeless. He looked like a walking corpse. The woman's angry shouting, the slap she gave him, all left him unmoved. Mason, how long are you going to let Henry ruin you? Back then you refused to go home because of him, even threatening to live at the orphanage. Her fingertip nearly poked his face. Now you've given up racing for him. Do you even know the racing committee has warned you? One more time, and you'll never get on the track again. I won't race anymore, Mason said. Both the woman and Daniel looked stunned. What? I left the orphanage only because you promised I could become a professional racer. Mason's voice was low and steady. I regret it. I shouldn't have left him back then. Are you crazy, Mason? His mother stared at him with unfamiliar eyes. Mason muttered to himself, if I had stayed by his side, how good that would have been. Ignoring his mother's tears, he turned to Daniel. Please give me back the safety jade pendant. Daniel's expression froze, and he stammered. I accidentally lost it. Where? Mason's tone was calm, but his eyes locked fiercely onto Daniel's face. His pale eyes looked fierce when cold, perhaps sensing Mason's unstable state. Daniel timidly said, at the team headquarters swimming pool. Mason didn't look away, colder than before. You can leave. After saying this, he got back in the car and sat beside me again. It was already dark. The streetlights cast flickering shadows across Mason's face, but couldn't brighten his eyes. I looked at him and said, you don't have to give up racing. That's what you love most. A racer needs to focus. A heavy, unhappy life background makes it hard to concentrate on speed. That's why I wanted to break up cleanly. But it was far from clean. I was stubborn and extreme, turning back again and again unpredictably. 12. After we arrived, Mason carefully laid my body to rest and then handled the funeral arrangements. The staff asked if he wanted to bury any personal belongings with me. Mason silently thought for a moment, then took out the sealed bag the volunteer had given him. Inside was the key to my rented apartment. He hadn't wanted me to enter my room, but thinking I was dead made it meaningless. Mason drove to the old neighborhood where I lived. He turned the key and opened the door. What greeted him were sticky notes covering almost the entire room. Mason froze, then slowly stepped inside. The room was small, with simple furniture. He tore off one note near the door, which earnestly said, to fall in love with Mason. He saw the same phrase stuck on the light switch by the entrance. Passing the dining table, every note on it repeated the same. To fall in love with Mason. The fridge, the walls by the bed, every colorful sticky note bore only one sentence. To fall in love with Mason. Mason stood in the room wrapped in those words. A short, indistinct breath came from his throat. I think by then he had begun to see the tangible effects of his illness. The half-closed door opened. Joseph appeared at the doorway. Shortly after you broke up, one day Henry suddenly forgot everything. He wandered the streets and nearly got hit by a car. He was sent to the hospital, where he pulled out an old piece of paper and asked me who Mason was. Joseph smiled softly but bitterly. He said the words on the paper were his own, so it had to be very important. What was so important? He looked at Mason's pale face and answered his own question. To fall in love with Mason. Mason suddenly understood everything and staggered back a step. He muttered, so he kept coming back to me because... Seeing him speechless, Joseph added for him. It was because he was sick and thought being in love with you was the most important thing in his life. That time was a blur for me. Sometimes I remembered Mason and knew I had to break up with him. Then, when I saw him, I pretended not to know him. Other times, I forgot everything, forgot we had broken up, and desperately called him. Found him, telling him I had to be with him. At first, Mason was willing to answer and make time to see me. I would look at him with unfamiliar eyes and lament how wildly my heart had raced when I first saw him again. But the more often it happened, the more annoyed Mason became. Everyone around him thought I was either crazy or just a terrible person. Probably Mason thought the same. My condition was unstable. When I suddenly sobered up and realized my foolishness, I regretted it. But I never threw away or destroyed that old piece of paper. Because if I did, then the next time I forgot everything, I would completely forget Mason. I didn't want to imagine how empty that would feel. So I listened to the doctors, trying to control myself with medicine, so I wouldn't do stupid things anymore. If it worked, I could quietly die. Mason would forget me, chase his dreams, and live a happy life. And I would remember him, the only person who ever gave me happiness in a life so thin and dull after my parents died. The best of both worlds. But I still messed up. I looked at Mason's pained face and silently thought. 13. Mason didn't take a single thing from my room. He only wrote something on that old piece of paper and kept it with him. Before the burial, Mason stayed by my side for a long time. In the darkness, he said, "Henry, I won't go anywhere anymore. I'll stay with you every day. But I'm already dead. I'll leave here soon," I said, without feeling any sadness. Leaving meant forgetting everything I'd always remembered. I was going to forget you, Mason. That's only fair. That way, I would never look back for you again. But he said, "Henry, I won't forget anything about you anymore." Mason built me a large grave. On the day of the burial, I felt I was finally about to leave. Mason somehow found that safety jade pendant again. He put it back around my neck. Leaning on my tombstone, he took out the carefully kept old paper. My soul was fading. I saw the words on it. To fall in love with Mason. "Okay, Henry,